the Latina Leadership Podcast, the podcast made for Latinas by Latinas, with Anjelica Cázares, Carolina Arenas, Diana Ruby, Jacqueline Villagomez, and Sonia Ramirez. Get comfortable, amiga, and enjoy the conversations.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Latina Leadership Podcast. My name is Anjelica Cázares, and I am your host. On today's episode, I have Rosalinda Martinez. So, Rosalinda, I always give any guest that I have here on the show the opportunity to introduce themselves. So, just tell me who you are, and if you want, let me know what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Angelica. It's a pleasure to join you here on your Latina podcast. We're, as you know, I'm sure both of us are proud Latinas. I am a native Houstonian, so very proud of having built a career here in our city, where I have the fortune to advocate for Latino communities. I've done it throughout my whole career, now over 15 years, but I currently serve as the Community Strategy Director for AARP Texas. We're the largest nonprofit in the country, and I'm in charge of the strategy across our 5 communities here in Texas. So super excited to be here and talk to you about everything that we do, and just in general, some of the things that we as Latinas deal with, and who have been some of the people who've helped us throughout our journey. I think that's extremely important. So I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you, Rosalinda. Actually, I have quite some information here in front of me. So I've seen what you've done, and I've seen what you've done for the Latino community. But before we step into that, I definitely want to give the opportunity to give a real interview. I hope you allow me to do that today, Rosalinda. Bueno, you said you're native to Houston. Well, sometimes it gives me an indication as to like how native Houstonian you really are based on where you lived or grew up. So where in Houston did you grow up? Are you from within the 16 area, or are you just from, not just from Houston, because Houston is Houston, pero it is Houstonian, where you're like from the wards, or are you just curious?
Of course. No, that's extremely important, because I think that it shapes a lot of who you are.
It does.
Houston is such a big city and obviously changing always. I'm from the East End.
Yeah.
I'm proudly from the East End, which we know has changed so much. I grew up down the street from U of H, right off of 45 South and Telephone Road. Went to Austin High School, Jackson Middle School, just kind of in that area. My parents still live in the same home where I grew up. And I love having grown up there. It was such a unique experience. I grew up near my aunts and uncles, and it was the street was called Delafield, and we always joke it should have been called Martinez Street, because it was my aunts and uncles who, at least 8 of the homes in the corner and the next street, were all my family. So as you can imagine, we grew up playing in the streets and playing, always huge family, but very proud to have grown up in that area.
So usually I like to ask a little bit about your upbringing, and I'm happy you actually brought that up for just a second, because it gives a lot of indication as to what fields or what careers we actually lead into our lives. How was it growing up for you, like as an inner city girl, right, from the East End, and knowing what it looked like then, what it looks like now? How was it for you?
That's a loaded question. You make me really think back about my journey. I mentioned the schools that I went to. I'm a proud product of HISD, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. But I grew up, as I said, going to Jackson Middle School and Austin High School. And, a lot of the people who went there, a lot of folks who went to school with me, didn't go to college and didn't, pursue a career, and, chose a different path in life. And, even in my own family, seeing family members who ended up falling to drugs and just, different environment. But again, I think that I had a lot of people in my life, mentors, or whether that was just a drive as a child to know, even though, and I'll start with this, my parents only had a 2nd grade education. And I think that that's extremely important to say, because as much as my parents are to this day, what I do, everything for, they're my motivation. There were certain things they couldn't guide me on. The language barrier, And so going to those schools, predominantly Latino, right? Growing up in the East End. And I remember going to college, so U of H. I'm a proud Coug, right? And when I went to U of H, it was the first time I really was around diversity in school. And I say that, and I think that's an interesting thing to say because in my school it was all Latino, and that's wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
when you really are as a freshman, you're like, wow, it was a little bit of a culture shock if I say it that way because all my life had been predominantly Latino, and I love it. Again, I wouldn't change things, but that did shape a lot of the challenges, I would even say, starting in my career. A lot of the things that we deal with, not just as women or Latinas, but you really the imposter syndrome and some of the
Mm-hmm.
things that happen throughout your career that we have to be very open about, right? I think we all deal with it. So I had a very unique upbringing, and I think it has shaped me and has made me appreciate so many more opportunities and try to give back as well.
So when we talk about the opportunities that it gives, and like I know, because I'm from around the way too. I'm from the East End myself.
Mhm.
When there's an opportunity to give, the people from the East End step up to mentor young children, and I think that's what I see you do today, based on like some of the things that, I mean, I'm looking at here, and you got you were named the Young Philanthropist of the Year from the Latino Learning Center, which is a nonprofit there in the East End. Can you tell me about when you think philanthropy? Because we all have different concepts of philanthropy. When you think philanthropy and what you've done, I really want you to highlight yourself, Rosalinda, and tell me the work you did to be able to for them to honor you like that.
When I received that award, I had to stop and think about, what speech I would give, right? And I had to
Hmm.
really think about how did I get here again from my journey and where I grew up to there. Um, First I'll start by saying I had to acknowledge that I learned the meaning of philanthropy from my parents. My parents were immigrants who came here with nothing, but would always give back. As they were learning their way through the American dream, and my father got a job, he would help so many people get a job in his company. And my mother and my father would always help people. And I didn't know at that time as a kid that that's what philanthropy was. Because philanthropy really is anyone can do it, anybody can make a difference in someone's life, right? And so when I started saying, well, how and why, and I started connecting all the dots, that's where I think I learned the meaning of philanthropy. And so I was very fortunate to have had opportunities where now, through my job at AARP, I'm able to empower and support other nonprofits, not just me, the whole team here, our association, to build programs that really serve our Latino community and our 50 plus, right? Our older adults. We don't say seniors, we say older adults. And so, I do a lot of community involvement as well. I'm in the Houston Arts Alliance board. I'm on Kids Meals on their board. I'm also on the board of Fit Houston. I try to volunteer my time. And I think I just learned it from Jose and Maria, my
Yeah.
parents, who always did it without seeking anything in return. And kindness is something you can spread very easily. You don't need to have a budget or, again, when I got the Young Philanthropist of the Year, I thought it was so ironic because I do morning affirmations. And so
Mhm.
one of my things for the longest had been, I'm a philanthropist. And I thought one day I will get there because you have this vision of you have to have, all this money to give back. And you just do it by contributing one seed at a time. And that's how I got there.
You mentioned quickly, well, because you've done a lot of the input, and that's how you got there. That you did the hard work, and I can see why they selected you as young philanthropist of the year. So, you mentioned quickly your role at AARP. Before I go back into your career a little bit, tell me a little bit about your position there at AARP.
So I am in charge of the community strategy, and so our mission is to empower older adults to live their best life as they age, right? And so I started 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, where we had to deal with a lot of different things. We had to deal with isolation that our seniors were, living at
Mm-hmm.
home. We had to deal with the issues that were happening in nursing homes. We had to deal with COVID vaccine awareness and education. And so my role is really coming up with the strategy as to how do we build programs that help us push our campaigns forward, such as caregiving, fraud, again, isolation, healthy living, financial resiliency. And so we do that by empowering other partners, such as the Mexican Institute of Greater Houston, when we saw the need during the pandemic for technology training. We built a program together with them to provide that. And so really we just go around and empower older adults. That's what we do. And my job is to ensure that all 5 communities that we represent in Texas, which are Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, RGB, and in Austin, that we're able to build those programs that impact our members and our non-members. And I believe in Texas, we have 2.3 million members. Across the country, we have 38 million members. And that's what makes us the most impactful nonprofit in the country with 38 million members.
I'm getting ads for AARP, and I was like, hold on. I was like, wait, right? But now that you call it older adult, I feel like an adult now. Now that I'm in my 40s, I feel like an adult. So maybe early membership might be up my stream. So Rosalinda, how did you, because that's an amazing role that you have right now, and especially being a Latina, right? Because our generation, although we are younger generation demographically in the United States, we do have older parents. And, as you know, we have like our households are, I think they call them 3-generational households. How important is AARP for the Latino community?
Well, I think we as a Latino community need to better take advantage of resources. And I see this in my own family. For example, caregiving is a big part of our work. What we do in ensuring when someone's caring for a loved one who's sick. And we don't really refer to a child, but in this case, an adult. You might be caring for your parents. And I realized when I started doing the work that a lot of people didn't even associate themselves as caregivers. I mean, Latinos didn't associate because there was not even a word for caregiver. And then I thought, well, why? And then I started doing a little more digging as I went out in the community and we did presentations. And it was a lot of people just are so busy, a lot of Latinos, that they don't stop to ask for help or seek the resources. And so we're out there kind of changing that, trying to do a little bit of a culture shift of like, it's okay to ask for help. And resources are out there. They don't cost you anything. We as Latinos need to ensure that we are taking advantage of programs like that and that we're sharing that with our neighbors, with our friends, and we are really empowered.
As Latinos, I think sometimes we don't know what's available to us, and then there's this pride mentality sometimes to not use up resources just in case somebody else needs it. What would be one tip for the older adults or for the younger adults who are taking care of the parents to be able to access those or not feel guilty about accessing those resources?
Well, I think we also, and this doesn't apply to women, Latinas, and for sure older adults, but you have to take care of yourself first if you're going to care for anyone else. And so that's part of seeking help and finding resources and raising your hand and just saying, I'm not alone and I have to take care of myself. I'm very big on self-care because again, it ends up being a problem. And we see it all the time, especially at AARP with people who are caring for their parents or who are just, and as you mentioned, a few generations living in a household, right? You have where they're caring for their parents and they're also caring for children and they leave themselves last. And in the Latino community, we see it more, I would say more than in any other community. So yeah, that's the biggest piece of advice. Stop, take a breather.
Okay. Cuídate.
Yes.
So speaking of taking care of yourself, you have quite a trajectory of career, and I want to touch on it a little bit because I feel I have some listeners who are either they're transitioning their careers or they're trying to advance in their careers. So I want to touch on it a little bit. You mentioned that you are part of U of H, you're a graduate of U of H, but how did your career look like? Because I'm looking at I'm looking at part of your career, but can you guide me a little bit down not that long line, but that line of your career?
Yeah, it was more like a zigzag. It was not and I think for people who grow up and don't have official mentors and guidance, right? I'd like to credit a big part of my journey to my faith, to God opening certain doors for me, putting people in front of me that I needed. But I will say when I graduated from U of H, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I studied broadcast journalism and have a second bachelor's in Spanish. And so I was too shy at the time to even be in front of the camera. And I was interning at KHOU and it was 2008, it was a recession. And so I worked there they kept me for like a year, and I was like, "Ugh, I have got to go seek other opportunities. I need to find a job where I will make a little bit more money." People were getting laid off. It was, like I said, a tough year, the recession. And I started working for the 2010 census, actually, as they were leading
Oh,
up to the campaign. And my journey didn't start, like I said, with a silver spoon. It was like I got a job, and it was the first time they were using handheld computers. And they're like, we need someone to train people in the community, and they have to go seek partners in community centers and facilitate the trains. And I said, great, I will do it. Sign me up. I'm going to make a little bit of money. I'm a recent college grad, and I'm excited. And I was leading a training one day, and the public relations director for the census walks in randomly into the center. So I'm leading a training, and right after he stuck around, he talked to me after the training. He said, "You're going to come work for me now with doing the PR for the census." I had just met him. His name is Jose Hernandez, and to this day, I will be eternally grateful for seeing in me what I didn't see in myself.
mm-hmm.
But I think that's partly because when you don't have the mentors and you don't have the people around you to see what's available and what there is out there, you just don't know. And so he, brought me under his wing, and I worked with him for about 2 or 3 years, where he taught me the ins and outs of building partnerships and aligning with campaigns. And then that led me to meeting Dr. Murillo, where I worked at the Houston Hispanic Chamber for about 8 years. And she also saw, again in me, and challenged me and gave me opportunities where I every year and a half got promoted until my last role, where I was vice president. From there, I'm at AARP. I've been here 3 years. So it was kind of like this just interesting journey of people in my life, but always ensuring that I kept up my relationships, that I worked extremely hard, and that I learned the good, the bad, and the ugly, and took that to my next opportunity. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
So you talked to the importance. How important is it for you to give back as a mentor yourself? Do you find yourself mentoring yourself also, other young ladies or young men um, who are looking to, like I said, change up their careers, and even sometimes they're older than you, where you're
Right.
like, yeah, where you're like, okay, how can I help? What is that servitude that you the want to give back?
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important. Just this morning, driving back from a meeting, I called to check in on one of my former interns. Just because I think a few weeks ago I was a reference, and I wanted to see, did he get the job, right? And I called him, and he was so happy to hear from me. And I do that very often, the same way that, again, other people who have open doors for me do. But when I worked at the chamber, a big part of my career, and one of the proudest programs I'm grateful for helping build, was actually the Emerging Leaders Institute. And it was a program to help young Latinos, build relationships and kind of move up the corporate ladder, and figure out how to negotiate their salary, and figure out how to find mentors, and seek other opportunities. And so I built that program from scratch. And I think it's still going. And by now they've had hundreds of graduates. A lot of them I still keep in touch with. A lot of them participated. They were former interns. And now, I mean, I see them doing amazing things in the community. So I did that because, again, that was a reflection of what had been a part of my life. And I continue to do it. I've had people reach out just randomly, and I'll try to take a phone call, or even if it's, somehow I can help them, because if people have done it for me. I've had some people I've contacted that I thought, let me try, when I was at the career exploring philanthropy as a career option. I remember I had contacted the, at the time, CEO of Chick-fil-A, of the foundation. And I said, let me just take a shot and see if he'll respond. Not only did he give me a shot, we had a 1-hour call where he even prayed for me at the end of that call, gave me such amazing advice, and he did not know me. He was based in Atlanta. And I think he just came out with a book. And it's somewhere on my Audible list, but philanthropy. But people like that, you'd be very surprised how many people would take the time to help you and to guide you. And then I think we have to pay it forward as well.
Yeah. The emerging young leaders, and okay, it's still around. I think they still, because the last time I went, they like had them on stage or something, right? Through the like, it's an amazing, from what I hear, it's an amazing program that is consistently like churning out pretty good selective people to do like amazing things there in the Houston area. I want to talk about now what is next for you, Rosalinda? And then I'm going to ask you about advice to give to those who are in positions like you who want to move around and then younger. But well, let's start with not what's next for you necessarily, like outside of AARP, but what's next for you, like on the like your I don't know, like your the next months, the next like what are you looking forward to? What's next for you? Where can we see you? How can we see you evolve?
That's a really tough question. What's next for me? I feel that I don't like to plan that much forward. I just like to be open to possibilities and always lead from my heart, right? And so like if it feels right, keep doing it. I mean, I've been in my position of community strategy director for about 5 months, so the role is fairly new.
Hmm.
Previous to my role, I was the associate state director of outreach and advocacy just for Houston. So my role is now statewide.
Yeah.
So I'm traveling and I'm getting to really structure what our state membership and our state outreach and campaign looks like. I think that's really exciting. Continuing to serve on different boards and just help the community. Also ensuring that again, I take a step back and avoid a burnout. I think that's something we have to be very careful about. I think last year with all the changes, I will admit in December, I don't know if you felt the same way, Angelica, but I was tired. I was
Yeah.
burned out. And so for me, these next few months, I'm really working on getting back to myself,
Okay.
getting back to myself to feel centered and focused.
Mhm.
And really, if I'm my best self, I can be my best self for others.
I was about to ask you what message do you have, but staying on that tone, what message can you lead with? What message can you leave us off with? Or what advice can you give somebody like me?
I think our thoughts are extremely powerful. I think that we have to think about what we think about. And I am giving myself that advice right now as I talk to you. One of my mentors would tell me when I was getting my MBA, and I hated math, by the way, and I was like, what am I doing getting my MBA? Why did I put myself in this position? And she would say that you are and you shall become. Every time I would say, I hate accounting, I hate numbers, and that stuck with me, right? It's like what you think and what you say really will be. So really, what are you taking in? What are you consuming on social media? What are you watching as videos? Who are you around? Who are you surrounding yourself? Now, one of my biggest goals this year is to say no to things that don't serve me and
Okay.
really prioritizing my time, in the sense of you can't do it all, right? I've had opportunities that I've said no to these last few weeks, invites or just community things, because I have to prioritize things. I have to prioritize myself and really be intentional. So I think that's something I would give others as advice. The pandemic changed the way I think we see work-life balance. I don't know that such a thing exists, but trying our best to always ensure that we take time.
I think that's amazing advice. I think I definitely will walk away with that. I have to say, you it's quite impressive to talk to you, Rosalinda, and especially those who come from the same place that I come. Because when I try to talk to people about where I'm from and what it's like, it's so difficult for them to understand like what it looks like. Because I know you were kind of a teen in we're gonna age ourselves in the 90s. and in the 90s it was a scary place, like it was a scary place. So but to want to give back to that area and that place, like it's definitely, like I said, it's quite impressive what you've done and what you've been able to accomplish. And I see so much more that you're capable of and that I know you're going to do. But to be able to watch your growth from back in a couple of years ago when I first like heard of you and seen you and met you, to like now to lead into like as you mature more and to watch you grow in that way, I'm excited to watch. Pero before I let you go, Rosalinda, are there any words that you would leave us off to? And how can we get more information on ANRP? And how can, if I wanted to, I don't know, see you or connect with you, how can I do that?
Yeah, well, people can reach out to us for AARP as far as find out where our community programming looks like, what's going on, and where you're going to see us. We're out supporting local festivals and wellness classes and technology classes, so they can go to aarp.org AARP.org/Houston. That's AARP.org/Houston y en español. AARP.org/Nuestro Houston. We're very intentional in providing options that are also either bilingual or all in Spanish, and also taking into account, again, programming that is in English. That's for Latinos as well, right? Acculturated and seek a little bit of a different types of classes. So we take all of that into account. So please make sure and stay in contact with us. As far as what would I leave you with, I think just no matter how small you think, I think it's always important to remember where you came from. As I mentioned, my parents came here with a second grade education, and for me to now be sitting here leading one of the largest nonprofit in the country with the largest membership in the country, 2.3 million members, empowering Latinos, and having done it for my whole career, I have to sometimes stop and think I'm extremely grateful and I'm extremely fortunate, but it doesn't stop there. It's your responsibility to help others and to continue giving and encouraging. And so saying yes to mentorship, saying yes to helping others, and always leading with kindness. I think my gratitude keeps me very grounded. And were it not for that, again, you would forget. So never forget where you came from and how far you've made it.
Nice. I couldn't have said it better. Rosalinda, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Y muchas gracias.
What did you think of the conversation? If you enjoyed what you heard, let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you for listening to the Latina Leadership Podcast, and we will see you next time.